Okay, welcome, Otis. Thank you so much for coming and speaking with me so I could share your background and your amazing experience that you have had in automotive engineering with many other engineering students at Cabrillo. So thanks so much. So I'm going to mute myself
Yeah,
and
no
I'm
problem.
going to let you start. Thanks, Otis.
Cool. No problem. Yeah, I'm surprised to be in the position where I'm talking to young engineers. It seems like very recently where I was in those shoes. So I was asked to maybe go through a couple questions and topics in my trajectory to where I'm at now in engineering, and I threw together a couple slides that I'm calling the Beginner's Guide to Automotive Engineering. I'll talk a little bit about me getting interested in engineering, attending college, and then sort of getting into the industry itself. So I grew up, like I'm sure a lot of you did, in Santa Cruz, in the mountains. A lot of great driving roads out in the mountains, and I just kind of grew up around cars, going to car shows with my dad. You know, when you're 16, the first thing is get your license and start driving. When you start driving, you start wrenching, and all of that kind of culminated in a pretty deep love for cars and an appreciation for how they work and how they drive and all that sort of stuff. And like I said, started and ended in Santa Cruz, sort of all the way through my schooling. Went to SoCal High and then eventually went to Cabrillo and on to college after that, and we'll get into that in a sec. Anyone who knows what the car is in the bottom right gets bonus points. So getting interested in engineering, I always kind of say this first bullet point here, which is that I feel like a car guy stuck in an engineer's body. I really don't identify myself as an engineer, first and foremost. Some people do, and that's great, but my love of cars is what brought me into engineering. I had a curiosity as a young guy about how things worked and just asking kind of layman questions to get a bit more behind the scenes info on the way anything works, but especially cars. And, things like chemistry, things like physics, all those sort of STEM science-y classes growing up, whether it was elementary school type stuff or high school AP classes, those subjects always interested me. And when I started talking about college, I had a sort of a headhunter / counselor who was helping guide me towards a college and a major, and naturally engineering came up. And what we kind of had to decide between was I could go really specific with automotive engineering or much broader with mechanical engineering overall. And automotive engineering is very narrow, and the applicability is sort of refined to automotive, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you don't necessarily lose your foot in the door to automotive engineering by going mechanical. It's a very broad degree. It's, I would argue, probably the most versatile or applicable degree there is. There's so many different things you can do with that, including automotive. I have talked to recruiters from Boeing and many other companies who specifically recruit mechanical engineers for their finance department. I know personally people that I went to school with who are friends of mine who work in the sales department, and they recruit engineers. They like the way they think about problems. They like their technical background. And then including, the host of different engineering roles that you can get with a mechanical background. So I went mechanical, and depending on the university that you go to, there's options for minors and concentrations and different themes at the university. So the college that I eventually went to had a strong automotive theme. There was also a design concentration, so you could kind of tailor your electives and really hone in the different sort of engineering focuses that you want to make sure you get in while you're at school. There might be a minor that you could tag on as well, and that can give you the broad range that an ME degree offers while still really making sure that you tap into the field that you're super interested in. A series of pictures of me being a little kid in front of cars and all too curious, like I mentioned. So going to school, I applied to 2 schools. I was not about to apply to 50 different schools coming out of high school. That was Kettering and SLO. Like I said in the slide before, different schools have different themes. When I toured Cal Poly, they had a lot of aeronautical, aerospace, aerodynamic sort of labs and equipment and courses. And they're known for that sort of stuff. And if you find that interesting, it might be a great school. I didn't see any engines though. And when I went to Kettering, there's a garage, there's an engine lab, there's a racetrack across the street, built for the school, sponsored by GM. So you can kind of see when you go to these different schools, the trends they have in the courses they offer, or the themes that they have in their labs, and all that sort of stuff is valuable when you're picking a school for you. So I applied to both those schools. Kettering was my number one, and I'll talk more about it in a sec. But it's very expensive. So Cabrillo is a great alternative and a much more affordable one. So what I did was I deferred enrollment to Kettering for 1 year, basically saying that after a year, my acceptance would still hold, but I need to go to another school first. And I took some general ed courses, English, psych, econ, that sort of stuff. And then I was allowed to take beginner STEM courses, so calc, physics, chemistry, that sort of stuff. Kettering wanted me to wait for the real in-depth engineering courses for their school. You might make transferring credits a little bit more interesting, or you might just have to make sure that they fully understand the curriculum that you were learning at Cabrillo, so that they're willing to accept those credits. But they have counselors that do this all the time, like any college does, so they can help you work through that. So why Kettering? I have to tell the story of how I heard about it, because not a few people do know what it is, especially out on the West Coast. I read in a Motor Trend magazine that it was the best return on investment for automotive engineering. And to a young person about to graduate high school, that's basically right up my alley. My favorite stat about Kettering is that it has a higher starting salary than MIT. And it's a really respectable engineering school. I think it's number 5 or so in mechanical in the country, and it's number 1 in automotive engineering. The huge selling point for the school, though, is the co-op program, which is, if you don't know, a rotation program where you go to school for 11 weeks in Kettering's case, and then you go to work for 11 weeks, and you go to school for 11 weeks, and you go to work, and you do that for the entirety of your undergrad. It's part of the degree. It's not optional. You get paid, and you get, you graduate with years of experience with a legitimate company from your industry. There's hundreds and hundreds of companies that Kettering has been connected with over the years, and you go to a job fair, and you walk around in a suit, and you chat with different companies at their booths, and you maybe get lucky with an interview, and then maybe they like you in the interview and get hired. If you want to quit, you can. If you want to change jobs, you can. If they don't like you, they might fire you. It's just like having a job, but intermittently with school kind of breaking it up in between. I'll talk about my co-op experience in the next slide or two. So that's a huge draw for me, the co-op program. There's very few schools in North America that offer a co-op program where you can start working as a freshman. Some will offer it as a junior or senior option, but Kettering, it's throughout all 4 years. Kettering also has a Formula SAE team, FSAE, also known as, and it's a team where you build a small-scale Formula One car. You design it, you manufacture it, you build it, you race it once a year, new car every year. And that was the team I wanted to be a part of and get that experience with. It's a huge, huge, huge plus on your resume. People in the industry really know and respect people who dedicated time to that team. But beyond that, it's a lot of fun, and you learn a huge amount by just getting the hands-on and the ownership that you inevitably will be given on a team like that. So they have a high priority on their FSAE team. They had a race track across the street, like I mentioned, specifically for testing that. And when I was touring, that's when I knew that I had to go to Kettering, was after seeing the racetrack. And then it has an automotive focus, if you can't tell by now. It was formerly known as GMI, General Motors Institute of Technology. And when it was first started, it was basically a breeding ground for GM employees. So they pay for people's school with a guaranteed job after, but they had to work for GM. So that's how the school got started. You could tell that bottom right picture is about the same as the bottom right picture here. It's same building. So So going to Kettering is a bit of a different experience. It's a very focused, very busy, but very developmental environment. Forewarning that you're moving to a very foreign place, and that includes just the fact that you're moving across the country to a new school in a new state. But Flint in Michigan is nothing like Santa Cruz, in good ways and bad. And that takes a lot of adjustment. So it's a brave new world out there. But if you can pass the test of, being able to handle changing up your environment drastically, you're really going to come out on top in the end. Like I said, it's very fast paced. It's going to mold you into high performing student, or it's going to make you sink if you let it. So don't let that be too ominous, but you go there to really dedicate yourself to engineering. And not that you can't have fun, not that there aren't opportunities to have fun and play sports and go to events and have free time and all that, but this is not a school where you go to waste a bunch of your parents' money and have a great time for 4 years. You're gonna learn a lot, and you can put yourself far ahead of your colleagues. I've never met someone fresh out of college who didn't go to Kettering who I felt was in the realm of the people that I went to school with. It really puts you a league above. So it's definitely worthwhile in that case. I could talk about it for a long time, but we'll move on here to getting into the industry. So the Formula team I mentioned in the last slide, that's what the car is in the bottom right, and that's the test track at Kettering, or the skid pad. There's a track off to the right of that picture. My trajectory was member to subsystem lead to president, and in that timeline, you receive a vast amount of ownership over parts, whether it's designing, machining them, supporting the team on race day when it comes to competition time, and you're leading people and you're teaching new students at the school, and it's a very challenging but very fun team, a very educational time. And even at Kettering, being on a team like Formula, they also have Baja. There's a couple different SAE groups. Being on that team sets you apart from even the people at Kettering, just because of that application experience, the hands-on knowledge that you kind of have to do and be a part of on that team. You kind of start to dip your toe in the industry with the design competition. You have to present to judges who are experts in their industry. So directors from GM and Ford and Bosch will all be there. Some of the people you might be working with, they might be your coworkers if you work for one of those companies. And they're going to give you really invaluable feedback on your engineering when it comes to presenting your design. But the real break into the industry is the co-op experience. So I got hired at Ford when I started at Kettering, and that's who I stuck with the whole time. I started out in R&D doing really rapid prototyping type of projects. I worked for a police team doing technology upfits. We'd go scout startups in the Silicon Valley. I worked on a drone team where we integrated drones in vehicles and did a lot of sort of feature type of projects for potential off-roading applications, work with the police, work with the drone supplier. This is all very sandboxy type of environment for R&D. Then I did engine design for motorsports on the rally car. That's the WRC Fiesta. I eventually moved to product development, doing sort of more technology upfits, lots of prototyping and really early stage advanced technology with the sensors and different surface materials. And that sort of term was focused on really using companies out of Silicon Valley that are coming out with really breaking technology and trying to see if we can find a use for them in the vehicle. And then my thesis, which you have to do for Kettering, you have an undergrad thesis, which is kind of unique. I did with additive manufacturing. We were doing multi-jet fusion, and I was designing lattice structures for favorably deforming impact countermeasures within the car, and trying to demonstrate the cost feasibility and the design ease that you get with 3D printing. So that was a really cool term. That was my last term. And then for full-time, I'm still with Ford. I do brake engineering for Mustang, and now I also do it for Mach-E. Rotors, calipers, and pads are the parts that I own. So that's current gen Mustang and next gen Mustang and Mach-E. That's the product development role as well. But when you have a long co-op experience with a company like Ford, or whatever the company is that you're working for, if you have a good relationship with them, I had a signed job offer before I graduated Kettering, and that's not uncommon at all. So last slide here, I was asked to maybe give you some parting tips. I'll start with sort of some surface level ones and then go a little bit deeper. These are all things that I learned myself, saw in the people around me, or saw in the workplace. First one is know the theory and the application. In an engineering role, you can be a real double-edged sword if you know the physics, the thermodynamics, and the theory behind how something works, as well as understanding how it's going to work in the physical form, knowing that this has to get greased or this typically works like that, and then also knowing the mathematics and the physics that drive why it works like that. I know people who are stuck on either end of the spectrum, and in those respective areas, they're king, but when you try to merge the two, they can't keep up. Next is your soft skills do matter. It doesn't matter how good of an engineer you are. If you can't communicate your brilliance to someone who does know what you're talking about or doesn't know what you're talking about, you're just not going to get far. People aren't going to understand you. They're not going to like you. And if you can't be liked and understood, it's going to be a challenging career. It pays off in many ways, whatever it is. For me, it was really hard when I moved away. I wanted to come home. I didn't like the new state. I didn't like the school. I didn't like the people. And I was told to just stick it out a little bit longer. And I did. And it's very, very good advice. Lots of people can't stick with engineering. Too much homework, too hard. And they switch to business or they drop out. Kettering has a massive dropout rate. Again, not because it's undoable or something and only geniuses graduate. That's not true. It's the people who don't stick it through, those are the people that drop out. So if you could stick it through, if you can graduate with an engineering degree and push yourself to not back out, you'll be very proud of yourself. I can tell you that. Which is sort of in line with you get out what you put in. This was kind of a slogan we had on the formula team to new members. It's a volunteer group. If you want to come in every day, you can. You'll get tons of responsibility. You get tons of experience. If you want to pop in once a month for a meeting, you're not really going to get much out of it. I know people at their co-op terms who moseyed around, played ping pong and went home, and sure they got paid, sure they got to say that they worked for X company, but they didn't do anything when you really dig into it. And if you're really networking and really pushing yourself and you're trying to engage in new projects, you can get a whole lot out of the co-op experience. So it's very much up to you. And the last one is my favorite one, and I think the most important one, which is keep your ego in check. I've been humbled. I will be humbled again. Nothing is more annoying than someone who thinks they know more than they do or just thinks they know a lot. Kind of ties back to soft skills, but keeping your ego in check is going to make you ask better questions. It's going to make you more curious, and your humility is going to be received very well by the people around you. And I think it's going to make you a much more well-rounded engineer with less blind spots. So those are my parting words. That's what I have for you guys. Thanks for listening.
Otis, thanks so much. That was really a very thoughtful presentation, and you're doing amazing right now. I'm on a call. So one thing I know you threw out a couple of times is Silicon Valley. And I remember when I spoke to you in the past that you were here during your time when you were a Kettering student. So can you describe that?
Yeah, so I got really fortunate. When I interviewed with Ford, I said, I'm from the Bay Area. And the guy said, oh, we're actually looking for someone to work in the Palo Alto office. So for the first 2 rotations, I worked in Palo Alto. I lived in Santa Cruz and I drove to Palo Alto. But So I would go to school in Flint, and then I'd fly back home and work in Palo Alto for a few months, and then back and forth twice. And then for the motorsports role, that was in Dearborn, so I was living in Dearborn, and it's not uncommon for a company to give you a stipend for living out and help you with rent, which Ford did. And then after that, COVID hit, so my last term was remote, and yeah, that was my situation. So I got lucky in the fact that I was able to sort of come back into town and work for part of my co-op.
Yeah, and it sounds like maybe the most difficult part, because you could always adjust to like, you could become a person that has grit, right? Or be a person at grit where you're gonna stick to it. But it sounds like the most difficult part was being in that area and meeting new people that might be quite different from yourself. Do you think that the idea of having that internship in Silicon Valley, bringing you back home for a little bit of experience, did that help you out?
For sure. It was kind of a godsend in a way, but I would have survived without it. I think
Right.
the biggest change in my mind was the first time I visited home again. Just subconsciously, it kind of reminds you that you're a plane flight away from where you grew up and your family and your friends and all the stuff that's familiar. So it acts as a good reminder whenever you do visit after that first term. And I always made an effort to come home in between terms or for Christmas or the couple weeks you have in summer.
Yeah, I think it's really great to know where we live because we are so close to Silicon Valley and even Southern California. There's so much industry, including automotive, so that no matter where you transfer to, you could always eventually make your way back to California for work because there's so much work here. But I think it's amazing that you got this, in-depth automotive experience that you wouldn't have gotten at another university.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to do automotive and you're serious about engineering, I can't say a school with a straight face other than Kettering. There's lots of other good automotive engineering schools, but Kettering is a one of a kind degree.
And then how about friendships that you made? Do you feel like you've made some lifelong friends?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, people from Santa Cruz are very easygoing, and you grow up around your friends from Santa Cruz, and you go to a STEM-focused school, and all of a sudden everyone's kind of nerdy, and they're from the Midwest or different parts of the country, and that takes some getting used to. But I live with the guy on the left in that picture now, and I have another friend who I met at school who was also from California, and you definitely make bonds, and those bonds are not necessarily going to break. And like I said, you're in school and you're busy, and then you go to work and you're meeting people at work, and then you're coming home and visiting, and life is moving at a fast pace and kind of in a constant state of change in a good way, and it keeps things new and interesting. So.
My son went to Worcester Polytech in Massachusetts, and I'm originally from the East Coast. So I like the idea that he went to the East Coast to experience what it was like. And he had a very similar situation or feeling like you did. It was just different, and the people were different, and it is a STEM focused school. But I think that every experience that you do in life, you grow from it and you take a piece of whatever you experience that you love to be a part of you. And I think it makes you a more whole person. And in the end, he had a hard time when he first went, but he loved it. And he actually worked on a Formula SAE project too. And he was mostly doing composite work with I don't know what the outside was, but he was doing composite work, and he went to SolidWorks there. So and he has lifelong friends as well. So it's really nice. He
Right.
loves his friends from home, but he loves those friends as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes it's scary to go somewhere, but it seems like you got a great education, you got great experience. It seems like you matured in a way, learning all these things, whatever you're talking about in terms of this tips for your journey. So it sounds like it was really a great fit for you. And now you're off to a great start in a career in automotive. So congratulations,
Yeah.
Otis.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And thanks so much for talking to us today. Okay, thanks. And I'm gonna stop the recording right now.
Okay, cool.